In life, there are three great questions. Questions that every single one of us has to answer in some way or another, or at least we think about it, even when we don't realize it. Those three great questions are, where do I come from? Where am I going? And why am I here? The three great questions of life. Where did I come from? Where am I going? And why am I here? You might call them the questions of origin, purpose, and destiny. Now, you all have to think about those things in your life at one time or another, or you have to carefully choose not to think about them. But the answers to the questions really make up your belief system. And we don't answer those questions in a vacuum. It's not like we all just sit down with a blank sheet of paper and we come up with our belief system, with our answers to these questions all by ourselves. We are influenced by our family, we are influenced by our personality, we're influenced by our culture, we're influenced by our friends and those who we respect around us. And in the end, you've got to trust somebody or something with information that you will use in order to make a decision about how you believe in these three important areas. You've got to trust somebody, you've got to trust something. And in my experience, there are three options of who you trust. You either choose to trust no one, you choose to trust yourself only, or you choose another trusted individual to place your trust in. And it all comes down to your level of trust. The answers based upon your trust in that way are crucial, the stakes are high, and the choice of who you trust matters a lot. So in chapter 16 of Matthew, we're going to talk about trust. And it's played out in the decisions of some key individuals and groups in how they treat the presence of Jesus Christ. And they too use those three different options in order to choose their belief system. The three options in this case are legalism, which means trusting in yourself for everything that you need. It's the idea of self-sufficiency. And just to give you a preview, that word is the Pharisees. There is the trust really of no one, which we might call rationalism. And it just means trusting in nothing unless you can see it. Empiricism would be another word that we would use. I've got to see empirical evidence set right before me that proves to me that this is the answer. And then thirdly, you can trust in something that's beyond yourself. So what's going on in this chapter? Just give you a little bit of an overview here before we get into the verses. Jesus is going to give some pretty vague statements about His mission to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, as at the same time they are attempting to discredit Him again. And then later He tells His men to basically forget everything that the Pharisees have told you and the religious leaders. And then He reveals to Himself, finally, after all of this time, who He really is to His disciples. And then He explains to Peter that the reality of who He is really the key to everything. And then He talks plainly, at last, with His guys about what in the world He's doing, why He's here, and what His plan is. But of course, unfortunately, they don't get it. And then at the same time, Lucifer comes along once again to tempt Jesus to not follow the plan that the Father has given Him. And then He explains that in order to enter into this kingdom that He is setting up, we too have to die even as He is going to die. And then He explains a little bit about the difference between the first coming and the second, which was really the major stumbling block, and is to this day, as to why Jews in general do not receive Jesus as the Messiah. So let's begin chapter 16, verse 1. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came in, and to test him, they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. Now, testing of a prophet was not a bad thing. In fact, it talks about how in the Old Testament they were to test the prophets to see if they were telling the truth, and if they weren't, they were to be stoned to death. If you want to check it out, Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 20. So if what a prophet said was not true, then the law allowed that person to be stoned to death. So testing of a prophet wasn't bad in and of itself. However, the word that's used there to test is the same word that's used in Hebrews chapter 3, where this statement occurs: "Today if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion on the day of testing in the wilderness, where your fathers put me to the test and saw my works for 40 years. Excuse me. That kind of a test was a test to find fault, a test to discredit, a test to get somebody to fail. Not a test to see whether someone was telling the truth or not. So that's the kind of test that the Pharisees and the Sadducees have come to place on Jesus. They want to make Him fail. They want to discredit Him in front of the people. So they ask for a sign from heaven. Now this becomes important because it's kind of this strange thing going on here, and as I'll explain, the Sadducees basically were rationalists, empiricists. They were the show-me kind of guys, but they didn't believe in the supernatural. So why would they ask for a sign from heaven, which would clearly be something that would be supernatural? I don't know. I still don't get that part. But they ask Him to show them a sign from heaven. And here's how Jesus answers. "When it is evening, you say, 'It will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening.'" Now, what is that all about? Well, you've heard the old adage, haven't you, maybe? Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. Red sky at night, sailors delight, as you, I'm sure, have all plied the 7 seas in your sailboat. What does that mean? Well, you know, it means that if there is a red sky in the morning, what's happening is the sun, very low at the horizon, is shining on the underside of a cloud bank, and thus the way that the light is scattered, the red light gets scattered more. And so you have this beautiful red sky that's then, reflected off the bottoms of the clouds. And that means there are clouds, which means the storms which move from west to east are coming over what was a clear sky. So sailors take warning, there's a storm coming. But in the evening, if you see red sky, that means that what was a stormy day is now a clear evening, because the sun, now low in the horizon in the west, is shining underneath what was a cloud bank but is now departing. So Jesus says, you guys have meteorologists, you watch the news, you know how to tell what the weather is going to be coming up. So if you can do that, why, you experts in the law and the Old Testament, why can't you see the signs of the times? And what is he talking about? Of course, he's talking about the coming of Jesus. And anybody that could do a little bit of math could know that this was the time the Messiah was promised to come. We won't go into that, or we'll be here all day. It would be a fun study, but I know we got lunch to have and all that. And if you could do any kind of reading of the Scriptures without